if when you start your Harley up and it's rattling and banging and sounding funny without going anywhere, just in neutral, yeah? Generally, if it's not an engine metallic noise, it's that chain, which is called your primary chain, drives the engine. When the engine is running, it drives the gearbox, but vice versa. You can't turn the engine over with a kickstart unless you've got your primary chain.
Yeah.
The clutch is locked up tight, kick over the gearbox, turns the engine, fires the engine. You can see that one's been too loose. They put grease on it, which it shouldn't have on it. But you can see the grooves in there, look, see them? Where it's been clanging away and hitting the bottom of it. So basically that primary chain is too loose. It's got too much play in it. Now you'll always find on these there's a tight spot. So as you rotate, you take your plugs out, rotate the engine. I mean, I've got the primary cover off because we've got a gearbox problem, but when that's on there, all you do is undo those two screws, take that inspection cover off, that's what it's for, put your finger inside, you can lift the chain up and down and see how much play there is, yeah?
And how much play is too much and how much play is too little?
What I do is, as I say, they're a bit finicky because you have to rotate the engine because all of them will have a tight spot.
Yeah.
I'm sure when they were brand new, they wouldn't have had a tight spot, but over the years you get play in here, you know. You can buy all the bearing kits for them, but in general, you think of how many years these things have been riding. There's 3 bolts on the bottom of the gearbox that go down through the frame.
Yeah.
When it was brand new, they'd have been nice and tight in there. The gearbox probably just goes, finds its own place, which will form a tight spot.
Yeah.
So obviously that is totally too loose. What I do generally, if you can get, I don't know, between 1/4 and 3/8 of play on your tight spot, always set it up to your tight spot.
Yeah.
Because obviously you don't want it to jam up, but you want about 1/4 of an inch. I set them to about 1/4 of an inch to 3/8 of an inch up and down on the tight spot, and then obviously your loose spot will be whatever it'll be. But the general rule of thumb, if that's sagging down there, that's going to rattle. So your adjustment,
yeah.
Okay, you've got 1, 2, 3 bolts there.
Yeah.
Slacken those off, and that is your adjuster bolt. All that does is it's a strange shaped bolt with the frame's just got a U in it like that, and you've got a bolt with like a washer. It looks like it's welded to it, it's not, it's machined in. That sits in there, pushes against the gearbox, so as you turn that bolt,
yeah,
it's fixed in that slot. Yeah, so that bolt isn't going to move, so it therefore has to move the gearbox backwards and forwards. So you just turn your bolt, loosen those 3 off on the underneath, turn that whichever way you want to go, loosen or tighten, okay?
Yeah.
Till it's set up. Then lock up your 3 bolts when you're happy with the chain. 9 times out of 10 you'll find the chain's too tight because you've locked the bolts back up.
Yeah.
So undo them again, wind it back a little bit, tighten up your bolts, check it again on the tight spot, and just keep going like that until you're happy with it. Because, like, as I say, all the play in them, 9 times out of 10, every time you do that up, it'll go too tight.
Yeah.
So you just want to wind it back a little bit. And once you have, if you've got to come this way because your chain's too tight and the rear chain is massively tight, drop off your rear chain before you adjust the primary. That's got so much play in it on the rear chain, it won't make the slightest bit of difference. But imagine you're trying to get that way to loosen your primary chain.
Yeah.
And your rear chain's really, really tight, it's not going to move.
Yeah.
So if you're worried about it, drop your chain off. It's only got a king link. Word of warning on the rear chain, you can do it, but it's a pain in the bum. Whilst you're adjusting it, get the point, there's your king link there, Okay.
Yeah.
Now you want to get that so it's back here somewhere or up there towards the rear, yeah? Because when you split that off of there, if that chain comes out from behind this cover, it's very, very, you can do it, but it's very, very hard to get the chain back round the cog.
Okay. Yeah.
So you're better off leaving it there so your chain stays on the cog. Otherwise you've got to take, it's not many bolts, it's just a pain in the bum to do, you know? So yeah, when you take your king link out, make sure it's back there somewhere, then you still get your chain rotating round the front drive cog.
Yeah. If in doubt, take the chain off, do the primary chain, then put the...
Do the primary chain, because once you've moved that primary chain, you're adjusting the gearbox backwards and forwards, so then you've got to set your rear chain. And that's it really for the primary chain adjustment. But as I say, the only thing you've got to watch is every time you tighten it back up on your tight spot, it will go tighter than what you want it to be. You want to give these a fair bit of slack when you do it, because the washers can lock up. Right, that's all loose. So what I tend to do is just grab hold of the kickstart, nothing delicate about it, give the gearbox a little wiggle, yeah?
Okay.
You know it's freed up then off of the washers underneath. So I'm not looking for the tight spot now because I've got to set it all up with because the clutch basket's undone, but that's too loose, yeah?
Yeah.
So your 9/16 there. Now when I push that down, you watch that gap. Right. See how much tighter that is now?
Oh yeah.
I need a little bit more. So I'm not setting it up for tight spot. That's about right. You don't want any, it's not bouncing, yeah?
Yeah.
You need play in it, obviously. That's about right.
Okay.
So then, if you then go and lock up your bolts on the bottom of the gearbox, which is obviously your next step. See it tightening up?
Yeah.
See, that's too tight.
Yeah.
So now you've got to loosen your bolts off, come back a bit, do up your bottom bolts,
Yeah.
and check it, see, because that's just too tight
Way
now.
tight, yeah.
Right, so that's now got quite a bit of play in it. See, that to me is too much now.
But by the time you tighten
So
it,
let's nip that back up. It's a bit of a funny old thing to do, but
you can see it going.
yeah, tightening up, tightening up. About right. I think what we'll do is give those a little nip up. You don't want to go too mad with them. Take some of the slack out of the gearbox.
How tight should we be doing the bolts up?
Very. The ones underneath.
By hand, but very.
By hand, but tight, yeah. Because that's your whole main drive system. That's probably a little bit tight again. So, see, when you back it off, you pull that, it'll pull the gearbox. Just give it a touch more. Right, now let's pinch those up. Right, that's good. There's no anything that's sort of that sort of play. The chain isn't bouncing. You don't want the chain bouncing, because every time it's bouncing, when you're riding it, it'll just do this, and all the slack will come at a certain point because it resonates.
Yeah.
And it'll just smash into the casing. But that's done up. That's about right. So it's just that fiddling between the two, you know. So once you set your primary chain up to what you want, the next step is adjusting your rear chain. So now we've moved all that, look, very, very loose.